एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो. चलो ये कर लेते हैं. दिस कुड बी अ ग्रेट इंट्रो.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
All memories are fabrications. So I would say I would like to be remembered as the guy who healed a sick healthcare system and hopefully a sick startup ecosystem. That's where the healership thing comes in. That when you're a part of a system, you can see what's wrong with it. Now, it's not that everyone in the system can't see what's wrong with it, but because they make money by being wrong or by predating or, taking advantage of people's ignorance and naivete, they refuse to call anyone else out. So I've criticized doctors, criticized corporate hospitals, criticized the government often enough. And why edutech? Because, boss, that's our future generation. Our generation has messed up this country. We don't want the next generation to continue doing that. And you have a dividend, you have a demographic dividend, you have a sweet spot. Why the hell can't you do good for this next generation? These are your kids.
In a way, the role of an investor is very much like the role of a doctor. The investor support starts right from birthing the startup, and like any good doctor, he will at times encourage you and at times prescribe you bitter medicine. In this episode, Akshadat has a candid and no holds barred conversation with one of the most famous doctor investors in the startup ecosystem, Dr. Aniruddha Malpani. Listen to this fascinating conversation giving an insight into both the world of medicine and the world of angel investment. And don't forget to subscribe to the show through htsmartcast.com, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts.
So, hi guys, I'm Dr. Aniruddha Malpani. I have the best job in the world. I get women pregnant and their husbands pay me to do that for them. So that's my day job as an IVF specialist. And I'm now an active angel investor as well. So it's like the best of so many different worlds. So, I just have fun every day when I get up in the morning, look forward to what's going to be new.
Okay, so great to have you on the show. I want to start by bringing your childhood memories back to you. What do you remember about childhood and what kind of family did you grow up in?
Hmm.
Are you from like a family of doctors or?
All memories are fabrications
Yeah, that's true.
because we reconstruct all our memories. So, obviously, this is not going to be a very factual account. And with all of us, we reconstruct them so we remember the happy things we tend to forget. But
you
yes,
know?
yes. So both my parents are doctors. So I remember in those day and age, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am. It was pretty much assumed that if you were bright, you either became a doctor or an engineer. And if you weren't bright, then you did a BCom and maybe became an accountant or a lawyer or something else. No, kidding apart. So, and it's actually such a great profession. Or maybe I should rephrase that. I think it used to be such a great profession. It still is because the emotional income you get as a doctor is unbeatable. I'm not complaining about the financial income, but quite frankly, there are lots of other ways of getting richer quicker with much less effort. But when a patient tells you to your face, "Hey, thank you so much, doctor. Every time I see my baby, I remember you." What could give you more pleasure than that? Unfortunately, what's happened is people have started discounting the emotional income and worrying too much about the financial income. And then I think the medical profession is really not perhaps the best choice for very intelligent, hardworking students. And the reality is to get into medical college, you need to be intelligent, you need to be hardworking.
So, what did you do for higher studies? Like once you finished school?
अरे यार डॉक्टर का तो कोई चॉइस ही नहीं है ना so this was after school you did your 10th and that's the time when we had the 10 plus 2. So went to Jahan College for doing your HSC 12 because I was pretty sure I didn't want to go abroad and I wanted to stay on and become a doctor in India, which means you need to go to an Indian medical college, which in those days were pretty much only government medical colleges. So you had to do well, but by the grace of God, I did. So went to St. GS Medical College or KEM Hospital in Mumbai. So that's 5.5 years, did my MBBS, got lots of gold medals along the way. Then what do you do as post graduation? So I did OBGYN, that's gynecology, just like my mom. Exciting field. You help new life come into this world, and it's a very happy specialty, unlike lots of others. Whatever you may say, it's these are kids who have 70 years of their life or 80 years, and now maybe 90 ahead of them, and you're helping them giving birth. So very, like I said, emotionally very exciting. And in those days, IVF was brand new. While I was a resident, there was the first IVF baby in India, and this was what all the medical journals and articles. There was a little mystique about it because no one spoke about what was involved. A bit like black magic, if not like a black box. Says, oh, this is great. We should be doing this for Indian patients. And when I say we, by that time after I finished, I got married. So my wife, Dr. Anjali, she was my batchmate in MBBS and MD. So now I know her for way too many years now. But so we both of us did gynecology, and she was very sure that what we needed to do was IVF, which is what we did, and which is what we've been doing, which I thought was a great decision.
So, like, you decided to bring IVF to India in what capacity? As an employee of a hospital,
No, no,
or
no. So that was very clear. So like I said, my mom and dad ran their own nursing home. So in one sense, they were entrepreneurs, and I definitely didn't want to work for a large corporate hospital. Again, in those days, there weren't too many, number one. So most of them were just trust hospitals, but a lot of political backbiting and all kinds of things. So they all look very exciting and great from the outside, but on the inside, really all they do is clip your wings and you're pretty much a widget, and they expect you to keep in line. So we're very sure we wanted to start for ourselves. And that's why, Sanjali got a Bombay University fellowship. She went to King's College. I went to California. Did a lot of stuff hands-on. Says, how do we actually implement this? We can't copy and paste what they do in the US and UK. We don't have that kind of infrastructure. Even if we bought the stuff, we wouldn't be able to maintain it. And remember, this was way back. So we finished about 85, 86, finished the MD then, and then said, okay, what do we do? So you need further training. None of this was available, and people were doing stuff in India, but it was very much behind closed doors. Therefore, we started. So we weren't the first IVF clinic. There were other clinics also, but still one of the handful of the first few ones. I think what differentiated us was because we'd spent time abroad.
how much time abroad?
So all put together, I would say a total of about a year. So we weren't actually doing, so a lot of it was a clinical observership. And that's the other thing we decided, because otherwise, if you want to train in the US clinically, then you have to pay your dues, which means you first have to spend 4 years doing a residency, doing all the gadamajuri which the hospital wants you, so that then you can specialize in what you want to. We didn't want to do that. So we said we have the existing infrastructure. And the thing is, if you learn, perhaps you'll end up learning all the wrong things because we can't replicate this. So we said we need to go to multiple different centers to pick and choose what we can learn and adapt and evolve. So we went to some very small centers because it's easier to copy and paste what they do.
Why did they agree to allow you to come and observe?
So again,
Like,
that's again very see, a lot of hospitals are very academic, and unfortunately, that's not true in India, which is tragic in one sense. People encourage you to learn for yourself. So as long as your credentials are fine, and as long as you're not touching their patients, because then that gives them medical legal liability. Hey, if you want to come and watch, come and watch. You want to learn by osmosis, please go ahead.
okay, so you would just like cold call them or write them an email or a
No
letter or
emails,
something.
no emails in those days.
No emails, okay.
Yeah, this was still on a typewriter, and we'd like to come, and so okay, yeah, and you had to think twice before making long distance phone calls because those were expensive.
But how did you fund it then?
Like I said, my parents are very supportive, so that's what they wanted. I mean, they were the ones who were pushing and said, why don't you go learn, bring these skills back with you, and then we'll see. So there was a lot of advantages which they provided that sound base, that you had an existing clinical infrastructure. You could do things independently. You didn't have to worry about making ends meet. You had the money. And then they would give you the clinical freedom to be able to say, okay, fine, let's see what we can do, what we can't do, what works, what doesn't work. And a lot of that is trial and error. But because you're doing it in a clinical setting with your mother being there, who's a senior gynecologist, so that makes a world of a difference. So a lot of it is then, okay, fine, this will work, not work.
So you spent a year outside. to absorb how the world is doing IVF, and
Yes.
then you launched it in India when you came back.
Yes. And again, interesting history. One of the things when we'd gone abroad was there was a clinic in the UK called Midland Fertility in Birmingham, which needed Indian sperm samples because, as you know, in Birmingham there are lots of Indian people staying there, and lots of them are infertile. About 10% of the married couples are infertile, and a lot of them needed donor sperm samples, but they didn't have many donor sperm samples from Indians. So one of the things, and the name of this doctor was Dr. Peter Bromwich from Midland Fertility. He says, I need to, source sperm samples from Indians. So I said, yeah, that's something we'd be happy to do. And this was very early days, where donor insemination was a taboo topic in India. So when he came down, he actually came down with a BBC crew, which were filming, what he was doing in order to get sperm samples for the couples whom he needed to treat. So then Indian journalists said, "Oh, what's the BBC doing in this little clinic in the middle of nowhere? Who'd heard of us? No one." So then they'd found out, and then we said, "Yeah, we're starting a sperm bank." So, whoa, what's that? We've heard of blood banks. We've heard of not HDFC in those days, but we've heard of SBI. What does a sperm bank do? Why do you need a sperm bank? And therefore, we spent a lot of time. And as it happened, because we were the first doing the sperm bank thing, there was a lot of press, and a lot of our time was spent in educating people about taboo topics, about what a sperm bank is and what IVF is, and very, very early days. And therefore, a lot of our focus was on what I call information therapy, on educating patients. So I always think in the healthcare ecosystem, the patient should be at the heart of it.
How how did you educate patients?
So great. So the first thing we did was write a book many, many years ago. So now we've written lots of books. Our first book was Getting Pregnant, how to have a baby, and again, did extremely well because, like I said, infertility really was a topic which no one wanted to talk about, even though it was so surprisingly common. तो तुम मंदिर जाते हो, मस्जिद जाते हो, मिन्नत मांगते हो और क्या करते हो? Because no one knew what to do. And gynecologists honestly didn't have much to offer in those days, and IVF was a big breakthrough. But there were so many myths and misconceptions, and there still are about IVF. So the book was a big step. And then those days, the internet was opening up. So had one of the first few. I don't know whether you remember those dial-up modems on
Ah,
8
yes.
kpbs and twang, 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 and then I had a VSNL account, and so there was a lot of it in the first few days. And one of the things we started was a patient education library, which again was the first in India and still is. That everyone knew medical libraries educate doctors. But there's so much information for patient education, especially written in the US and UK. And that's the one thing we learned, that doctors respected patients and took time and trouble to understand what their personal preferences were. In India, everyone has a very paternalistic approach. So we had a lot of these books. We started what's called the Health Education Library for People, which still runs.
Like an offline library.
It's a real world yeah, it's a real world library. It's and our hope and dream was that every hospital would have this patient education library, because doctors are too busy. They don't have the time and they don't even care. Stupid question. Yeah, go ask my assistant or whatever. And we said, it's not good. It's not good for the patient, not good for the doctor, because if something goes wrong, that patient will not forgive you. So why don't hospitals actually start patient education libraries? Anyway, patients and their relatives are hanging around. They have questions. No one's answering them. And the doctor doesn't need to waste his time. There's a nurse or an assistant who will help the patient find the information they want. 80% of your questions will be answered. So then you're only asking the more sophisticated, ones relevant to your needs. Again, very foreign concept. No hospital was interested. Everyone said, yeah, great, Dr. Malpani, great idea. And so I think that's one of my failures. So I learned a lot by what didn't work. But anyway, so that was one thing. Then we went to pharma companies saying, why don't you sponsor this? Yeah, Dr. Malpani, of course, as pharma companies, we want to put patients first. All BS. All they want to first is their investors and their bottom line. And therefore, all they care about is, doctors and how can we get doctors to prescribe our medicines, for which obviously all we need to do is bribe doctors. What do we care about the patients? And it was just throughout, through this thing, which is fine. I'm a realist, so I always think of what could have been and didn't. So I think of myself as a failure. What didn't I manage to do? in order to convince people that this was a worthwhile investment. So we started the library, which we still run. Then we wrote lots of books, and all these books are now available online for free. The website is thebestmedicalcare.com. So we wrote books on for doctors on successful medical practice, where the message was the most important thing in your practice is your patients. Everything else is paperwork. The tragedy is that that's not what we're doing. In one sense, the medical profession has sold itself out. Cards, kickbacks, commissions. Where is the professional integrity? You bend over backwards for politicians. I mean, just look what's happening during this COVID-19. To make me get started breaks my heart. But so and it's actually getting worse. It's getting progressively worse because even these young medical students, what are their role models? What are they looking up? And now everyone wants to buy a medical seat. So you start off on the wrong foot. So anyway, I'll come back to that. So again, the books are there. So there's a book called Information
So,
Therapy.
if you can, take me through the milestones of the Dr. Malpani clinic. Like, when did you officially launch the clinic, and what was the growth like in that? And again, I'm like, this is a business podcast, so to some extent, I'm also asking you, how did it do as a business in terms of.
So one thing you must remember is the past doesn't repeat itself. And therefore, I think the lessons which people should take, they should take with a very large pinch of salt. Because if I was starting an IVF clinic today, what I would do would be very different from when we started it 30 years ago, because everything was different 30 years ago.
And you were first movers in the
Yeah,
market.
exactly. There weren't too many. A lot of your time now, everyone at least knows. Abhi to gali nukkad mein IVF clinic hai. So your messaging is different. We were the first ones to have a website. Run a this thing. Now to everyone copies and pastes everything we put up. So I always say, yeah, imitation is the best form of flattery. But so in those days, as I said before, our primary focus was on educating patients. See, we've never given a single naya paisa as a cut or a kickback or a commission to any doctor. Now, even in those days when we started, this kickback system had become pretty rampant.
You started by converting your parents' clinic into like Dr. Malpani
Yes,
clinic?
yes, yes. So again, we said, why are we doing OBGYN? We don't want to do that. We only want to do IVF. This is such a cool thing to do, and there's so many patients. And because of that sperm bank and because of all those articles, we actually started getting direct patients directly from day one, which is very unusual. Trust me. In retrospect, you realize how unusual it was. We didn't even realize because it just kind of, when things fall into your lap, you say, "Haan, kya badi baat hai?" But anyway, so a lot of patience, a lot of this thing. It was the two of us. We had to figure a lot of stuff out, a lot of heartburn, a lot of mistakes. In those days, even to import stuff was such a nightmare, not even funny, because you had to go to the customs officer and explain to him, ye kya hai. Sometimes you had to bribe them. अरे यार इसका shelf life सिर्फ 1 महीना है, इंडिया में बनता नहीं है. अगर इम्पोर्ट नहीं करेंगे तो इन IVF clinic नहीं चलेगा. We used to have liquid nitrogen containers. Now, to all this is very mainstream. You can pick up a phone and order all these disposables and culture medium. In those days, you couldn't. So a lot of it was on establishing things, and a lot of it was Gadha Majuri, which I think is true for everyone doing something new. It's like, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to set up last mile logistics. There's lots of stuff you need to learn by doing. No other way by learning that stuff. But like I said, that so much is past history. uh, there was a lot of mistakes we made, but I think the good thing is we could correct a lot of those mistakes because again it was the two of us. We didn't have to worry. We didn't have to take shortcuts.
So by when did you like, get the major part of your initial setup done and started like, going into the scale up mode?
So okay, great question. So the question is what your definition of scale up is. So my definition of scale up, and we've had lots of these questions. Why don't you start a chain of clinics? So many other people are doing it. Isn't that the right thing? You can scale up in breadth and you can scale up in depth. And our idea of scale up has been very different. Our idea of scale up is what gives us pleasure, what allows us to provide the best care possible for our patients. And that's something we don't want to compromise on. So again, one way of doing it is to train lots of doctors, or the other thing of doing it is to start a franchisee kind of system. And we get all those requests. We said that's not the reason why. I don't practice medicine for money anymore. God has been kind. Been investing in the listed space for donkey's years now, which has been doing very well. So my passive income is actually far more than my professional income. So I continue doing IVF because I enjoy it, and then I can tell people, look, this is the right thing to do. Don't cheat patients. Don't take shortcuts. And I'm not very popular amongst doctors. Let me tell you that. Because I call people out about cuts and kickbacks, and I actually say it's giving a kickback is a stupid thing to do. You're signing away 50% of your income for the rest of your life. This is a race to the bottom. What professional self-esteem do you have if you start doing things because the GP tells you, अरे ये पेशेंट के लिए IVF करो और 4 लाख चार्ज करो और मुझको उसमें से 2 लाख दो, अच्छा बकरा है काटो. Whether that couple needs IVF, doesn't need IVF, all kinds of things. So interestingly, there are two groups of patients who get terrible medical care in India: the very poor because they can't afford it, and the very rich because they kind of say, yeah, we're going to the best doctor. Now, the best doctor is a brand name doctor, may not be the best, but anyway, so therefore, like I said, so we've been lucky in the sense, we've been able to maintain ethical principles. We've been able to walk our talk. It's not just theory.
So I want to know that, you are an angel investor, which means that you need to start with money. How did you earn that money?
So initially, all the money we earned was professional income. That's the only source of income for a doctor. The difference is that we didn't. Doctors are daily wage earners, Akshay.
Yes, absolutely.
एक काम करो पैसा मिलेगा, नहीं करो तो गया पैसा ऐसा. Then what? Terrible. And I mean, fortunately, a lot of my friends are stock market investors. I read a lot of books. A lot of that made a lot more sense to me. How do you generate passive income? And you either do it through real estate, which I didn't like at all, or public markets, which I thought was great. So the value investing piece made a lot of sense. No black magic about that. And one of my friends, Rakesh Junjunwala, so apne ko to kuch samajhta nahi hai, to, but okay, so blindly trusted him. Like I said, God was kind. The markets have kept on doing very well as the Indian economy has done very well. So whatever professional income we had, I didn't buy a new car or anything else, didn't need to buy a new clinic or buy a new house. So we invested that in the public markets. As a result of which that corpus has just kept on growing. And therefore, even the dividends I get from my uh, public markets is more than a doctor would earn on their professional practice. And not that IVF doctors don't earn well, we do. And you could so quite frankly, to answer your question, how many patients do we see? We do about 300 cycles a year. But you know what, Akshay? Overnight, I could increase that to 3,000 if I wanted. All I would know is to give a kickback to every doctor to refer a patient to me. We have a great reputation. We've been doing this for 30 years. Everyone's heard of us. But abhi GP ultimately, when you're infertile, what do? You either go to your GP or your gynecologist, who does your initial workup. Then the GP or gynecologist says, okay, yaar, you need IVF. Then the next thing is, किसके पास जाए? हाँ, हमने डॉक्टर मालपानी की बात सुना. अरे यार, वो तो अच्छा नहीं है, उसके पास मत जाओ. अच्छा क्यों नहीं है? क्योंकि वो हमको कट नहीं देता है. Which of course they're not going to say. So that same GP who will refer his own bhabhi to me for the treatment will never send a patient to me, which is fine. But so therefore, then so then all our patients are either word of mouth or because of the online stuff, and they appreciate the fact that we're open and frank and put our patients first. So it all kind of ties in. So I think this entire metric of how many cycles you do is ridiculous. And quite frankly, Akshay, is that if I wanted to maximize, see, the trouble is vanity metric means what? That's what you focus on. So if tomorrow my focus was maximizing my number of IVF cycles, then every patient who walked into my clinic, I would treat as a bakra and convert her to IVF. And I could do that very easily, Akshay, but I don't. I tell a lot of patients, hey, don't be stupid. You don't need IVF. You can make a baby in your bedroom. Why do you want to waste your money? Now, some patients appreciate that. Some patients think this guy's an idiot and go to someone else. Good for them. I don't care. I don't need to do this for either a vanity metric or make money or any more. So to that extent, I'm blessed, Akshay. And that's always been true. You're right. It's not like my passive income was that much when we started. It was significantly less, but I didn't need to scrabble for a living. Like I said, my parents are well off, and they said, do what is right. Forget about everything else. We don't care. Uh, so does that answer your question? Or
Yes, it does. So, uh, why not look at an ethical scale up? I mean, it could be
Ah, great
possible
question.
to.
Great. So we tried that also.
Hmm,
So we
hmm,
said, yes, what does an ethical scale up require? Akshay, it requires patient capital.
right. Yeah.
Patient capital is not available in this country. If you take money from a VC, तो वो 5 साल के अंदर पूछने वाला है, डॉक्टर साहब, अरे यार एक क्लिनिक के 2 ही क्लिनिक करे, वो तो उसने 10 क्लिनिक कर डाले, उसने तो 100 क्लिनिक, वो क्लिनिक में करता क्या है, पेशेंट को काटता है, ये करता है, दैट यू डोंट केयर, मुझे कुछ लेना देना नहीं, तुम मेरे रिटर्न ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करो.
You could have put your own money, like if patient capital is not available externally, that could have been.
Yes, so patient capital is now available with me internally, but I'm too old to do this now. So I don't want to do it. So for me, the most important thing in my life at this stage is my reputation. You're right. If I had that same amount of money maybe 20 years ago, which was personal money, which I could afford to invest without this thing, then I might have thought about it. But I'll tell you another thing. All this stuff requires a lot of energy and running around and stuff like it requires a certain temperament, as this is what I want to do. And I don't think I necessarily have that. I want to do what is right for my patient. And whether it's one patient or 100 patients, so I care much more about depth and quality than I care about quantity. So it'd be great if I could find someone else who thought the same way, who said, yes, this makes sense. This is what I want to replicate. But it's not easy. A lot of people think I'm a crackpot.
So, have your children followed your footsteps in terms of joining the medical?
No. And I told them, don't do medicine. That I was very sure about. So both, so my older one, she got into medicine. We said, don't take it. And I'll tell you why. The writing on the wall is what? Does anyone respect a doctor anymore? What have we doctors done to our own medical profession? The first thing is everyone, यार ये पैसे कमाने के लिए कर रहा है, टेस्ट क्यों ऑर्डर कर रहा है. Tragically, people trust Dr. Google more than they trust their doctor because we doctors have let our patients down. We've lost their trust. All these are open secrets. The step number one is acknowledge the fact that there is rubbish going on, which we conveniently turn a blind eye to. Two, it's the own leaders in our own medical profession who are often the most corrupt, which is how you become the president and the chairman of all these societies. Because you keep each other happy, and okay, this year you get elected, next year you elect me, and then you have this nexus with the pharma companies. Who Why do doctors require pharma companies to sponsor medical conferences? Can you please explain that to me? हम कोई भिखारी है क्या? एंड आजकल तो वेबिनार के लिए लोग फार्मा कंपनी की स्पॉन्सरशिप मांग रहे हैं. आई मीन वेबिनार इज फ्री. सो व्हाई द हेल, आई मीन नो सेल्फ रिस्पेक्ट. एंड द जनरल स्टैंडर्डाइज बाकी सब लोग कर रहे हैं, हम क्यों नहीं करेंगे? अभी तो ठीक है, चलो कोई बैंकॉक और पेरिस नहीं भेजेगा, लेकिन obviously there's money changing hands. But they refuse. This is a complete ostrich in the sand attitude. No one dares call anyone else out because they're all equally corrupt. And if I try doing that, Dr. Malpani, you're a anyway. So you're what all kinds of things. You're a you're a snake in the medical profession. You're stabbing your colleagues in the back. I said, how? By telling the truth?
Yeah, aren't you like passing on your bias to your kids? I mean, this is.
Great question. So I told them this is the writing on the wall. We've been blessed and we've been very fortunate, and God has been kind. And but look, the whole point is you need to skate to where the puck is going to be. This is not what the situation is going to be when you guys are going to start practice, which is, my older one is now 30. Oh, sorry, she'll kill me for saying that. Anyway, so this is when she would have started practicing medicine in 2020. What would she do, poor thing? She'd be filling up forms, she'd be answering what some government bureaucrat in their wisdom decided should be done, shouldn't be done. Pretty miserable life. And she's done very well for herself. So he said, forget it. So she did her undergrad, got a scholarship, went to Oxford, did a BSc in master's in immunology from Oxford. Then said, I don't like this. So then she did a master's in environmental science from Cambridge. So I don't like this. So then she worked for 5 years in London in a social impact fund of funds called Big Society Capital. I said, that's great, but you know what? I need to do something else. So then she went to Stanford to do her MBA and got married in the process. And now she's an entrepreneur and she makes films. So I'm very proud of her. If she'd done what I told her to do, she'd have got stuck in a rut and she'd have cursed me every single day of her life. I did this because you told me, Daddy, and now look where I'm stuck. Yeah, and that's true for my younger one. She did her undergrad in Bombay. We said, please do your undergrad in Bombay because sometimes you do your undergrad in the US. We can afford to send you, but then it's mostly party time, so you need to be a little mature. And then she did a master's at the Yale School of Forestry on environmental sciences, and then she worked for a green tech company in San Francisco, worked for one in Nairobi. So lots of things happening, and I'm so happy. And the great thing is, I learn so much from them because I know nothing about what they're doing. So that's one of the reasons I'm an angel investor. I need to keep up with my kids, so they can't BS me with, "Haan, daddy, tujhko kuch samjhega nahi." I said, "Yeah, show me your EBITDA and show me your business plan and what's your MVP." So they can't take me for a ride. So I think that's fine. Anyway, So I think the great thing is you need to keep up.
You started building passive
Uh,
income by investing in the stock market. So when did you switch from doing that to taking more risk and investing in startups?
so I haven't. That's exactly my point. I haven't switched anything. Okay, all these are parallel tracks. So most of my money is still very much in the public listed markets. Thank you very much. And whatever surplus income I generate from that, I use for angel investing. My professional income, I would never put in a startup. Trust me, that's hard earned income by just sweat and blood and tears. वो कोई startup में थोड़ी डालने वाला हूँ. But I mean, I understand money is fungible, but कुछ भी करो थोड़ा emotional bucketing तो सब लोग करते हैं. I'm not saying money is easy come, easy go, and I don't burn my money. I'm a Marwadi. But I'm kind of much more willing to risk that, if you know what I'm saying. So most of my money is still very much listed space, but I also understand what I don't understand. So I don't have the energy to sit listen to investor calls, and I can read a balance sheet and this thing, but I don't want to sit and read annual reports and look at the fine print of what the auditor's qualifications are. I know enough to do that, but I don't want to do it. I find it boring. So my money gets managed by my family office, which takes all the decisions. I'm terrible at pulling triggers with a lot of that stuff. Behavioral economics, all this stuff, and doctors think they're over smart anyway. So that I outsource, and then whatever the money you generate will then get deployed. And I have an analyst who keeps me honest, plays devil's advocate, saying, "Dr. Malpani, don't be an idiot." Because then what happens is every time as an angel investor hat, you fall in love with the entrepreneur because entrepreneurs are charismatic and they're going to change the world. And so it's very easy to fall in love and then very easy. And I've burned my fingers often enough. So I try not to fall in love so quickly. And anyway, my analyst keeps me honest.
When did the first such investment happen? How did that happen?
Oh, long back and didn't turn out well at all. So, like I said, I've been blessed, lots of friends. So, one of my friends is Rajesh Jain. He ran, one of India's first digital this things called India World, and he sold it to Satyam and made lots of money. And this was in the dot-com boom days, where we said healthcare needs to be fixed. All doctors are dinosaurs. We need to provide patients with personal health records. This was in the good old days, huh? So we would effectively give them clever cards with SIM cards, and you'd put all the medical records. And this was a company we funded in Bangalore, messed up completely because uh, two hands off, different geographic locations. So learned lots of things. But that was way back. When was it? 2000 .com क्या हो गया? 2000? 99. Yeah, yeah. So that burned my fingers once. Then there was an other company in which I was the board of directors. This is very high profile. This had Rama Bijapurkar and Ashok. This is the guy who Ashok Wadhwa, who runs a very successful P firm. This is the .com days, so we need to create a portal. Everyone's creating portals, and if it works in the US, it'll work in India.
But what that was a good investment, or again it went bust?
No, no, none of these. So again, see, I measure investments by learning on investment, not return on investment. I don't expect to make any money on all this stuff. So learning on investment, great. Return on investment, big fat zero. And that was a lot of money for me in those days. But ठीक है, live and learn. And then, so I said, I can't afford to keep on burning my fingers like this. So one of my friends introduced me to Mumbai Angels. And by, then there's a network and a lot smarter people who understand a lot more. And, at least I don't make the same mistakes twice. So signed some checks, learned from them, read the few books. And now I do most of it through my family office. And part of it is also now, part of what I think is one of the things which the Indian startup ecosystem doesn't do well is share information. Entrepreneurs don't blog enough, investors don't write enough, and that's one of the things I wanted to change. And that's why we had all that LinkedIn stuff and a blog and what's an investor's perspective. I said we need to walk our talk. We need to be open and transparent, and that's very good because then entrepreneurs can call me out. Yeah, बातें बड़ी करता है लेकिन सचमुच तो entrepreneurs को shaft करता है. So I can't even afford to do that because if I do that, I'll get into trouble, which is good. So we want to be open, transparent. This is our process. This is what we expect from you. Anyway, so then there was still a third investment which went down to zero very quickly. This was a friend who said, yeah, this guy is great. He's an IIT grad. He's done this clever thing. I said, हाँ तू बोलता है अच्छा है तो yeah, check ले ले. दे दिया. Never saw the guy. The initial checks, the first one with the Netcore thing in 2019 was fairly large. It was about 2 crores. The portal one was smaller. The one I think this was about 7 8 years ago in this company. It was called Urjas, which was biofuel kind of company, which was about 50 lakhs. But I was the sole angel investor and didn't understand much. Anyway, so burned my fingers. And then, like I said, did it through the network and now I'm much more comfortable. And I'm looking for contrarian bets. I'm kind of saying I have no right to win against VCs. They have far more money and a far deeper network. But the right I have to win is I can take contrarian bets with patient capital.
Why didn't you give up after burning so much money? Like you burnt close to 3 crores, maybe. Like, what made you say, I want to continue?
That learning, but that learning is priceless. I said, now that I've made the mistakes, the least I can do is learn from them and, not repeat them again. And if nothing else, I'll make some new ones. So my wife has been married too long to me to divorce me for doing stupid things. So, okay, she turns a blind eye. हाँ ठीक है करना है करे हुए तो this is, so that's okay.
Uh,
And again, like I said, some of it was also because of my daughter. She was doing all this angel investing in this fund of funds in big society capital in London. So I said, yeah, social entrepreneurship makes so much sense. Hey, you're doing it in London. Why the hell don't I try doing this in India? So many things. And I'll also tell you one thing. When you reconstruct some of these things now, Akshay, you often reconstruct them incorrectly. Like I said, my mind will play all kinds of games. So, but when theek hai, and the only reason people become angel investors, or the only good reason they should become angel investors, is for emotional reasons. Again, people think I'm an idiot when I say that. अरे यार नेक्स्ट उबर ढूंढो. अरे यार तू ओयो रूम में पैसा डालता तो तू कितना बनाता. I said, where is that replicable? I mean, if Sequoia and Matrix can't replicate, and they have to take so many portfolio bets because they don't know what's going to happen, what gives me the right to do any of that stuff? So I don't pretend. Life is probabilistic, full of uncertainty. These are complex adaptive systems, and answers will emerge. I don't care. I just want an entrepreneur who has integrity and will not shaft me, who has humility and will be willing to learn from me, who has curiosity and is willing to learn for himself and is willing to teach me. And we will try to live that and this thing. So therefore we're very vocal about, so all this stuff is available on our website, which is malpaniventures.com. We've created startupmentors.in because the reality is there's so much rubbish which happens in the startup ecosystem, just like it happened in the medical profession. And I'm happy to call people out. And the good thing is I can afford to do it, Akshay. I don't have to keep anyone happy. No VC dares talk aloud. You give them 4 drinks and then you talk to them in a bar and they'll tell you a completely different story about the politics within VCs and how they shaft each other and all kinds of stuff. But on their face, the most charming people you could possibly meet. The reality is very different. And I can say what I want because, I mean, I'm just being honest. I've burned my fingers often enough for saying what I want. We'll come back to that afterwards. But my wife says, तू तो idiot है, तू कभी सीखने नहीं वाला है. तो I said, okay, अभी क्या ना, अभी बुढ़ा भी हो गया, अभी क्या सीखना है?
So how much do you typically write as check now? Like,
I'm very comfortable writing between 50 lakhs and 2 crores. And again, our philosophy is all online. We prefer doing it in tranches. And a lot of it we let the entrepreneur run. I hate micromanaging people. I'm very lazy. अगर मुझको करना तो मैं खुद कर लेता ना, तू कर. So I think of myself A as a catalyst, and B, because we are open and transparent, ताली दो हाथ से बजती है, this is what we expect from you. And we assess two things. One is attitude and the second is performance. Attitude is very easy. Does this guy send us MISs? Do I have to, keep on pinging him, reminding? Does he hide stuff? Which means, बस second check तो नहीं लिख के देने वाला हूँ. तो कुछ भी कर. You're doing very well. Great for you. You sell out. I'll sell out. I don't have the patience and the energy to deal with people whom I think are toxic and who don't respect me. Performance, like I said before, I'm much more forgiving because at the end of the day, I only care about process. I can't care about outcomes because I know that in my daily life as an IVF doctor, no matter how good a doctor I am and no matter how much I do, I can never predict which patient will get pregnant and which don't. Because I can make great quality embryos in the lab. वो मेरे हाथ में है. लेकिन अंदर डालने के बाद यूट्रस के अंदर डालने के बाद implantation is a black box. I can't control that. And that's true for the startup system as well.
that's an amazing way to look at this. That you are birthing startups as a parallel to the way you birth.
But I do a lot of presentation. I actually tell people doctors make good angel investors. And one of the things you're taught is empathy. I mean, by the time you finish medical college, it's already been squeezed dry out of you is a completely different thing altogether. But part of the reason you became a doctor is you want to help people, right? So you care, you want to be kind, you want to be seen as someone who's helpful. So I think doctors have that empathetic streak in them. And because, like I said, I've been fortunate, I see patients on a daily basis, and I don't have to do a lot of rubbish which other doctors are forced to do. I can still afford to put my patients first. So in my angel investing hat, I think I'm putting my entrepreneurs first, plain and simple. So we want our entrepreneurs to win. And my hope is that if I'm good to my entrepreneurs, they will help me to win also in the process and they won't shaft me. And that's a leap of faith. And some of them will. And my hope is that my ability to identify good entrepreneurs will progressively increase over time, which is why I will continue doing this, Akshay. My hypothesis, I'm getting better at identifying them. B, I have a higher public profile, so it's easier for the right entrepreneurs to come in touch with me. We have a much better defined process, which we learned the hard way. We have a brand which stands for something, and we've made so many mistakes that we won't repeat them again, hopefully.
Let me ask you on details on these things. So you said you're getting better at identifying entrepreneurs. So tell me about that. How do you?
We all delude ourselves that we're getting better, don't we, Akshay? I always tell people the easiest person to fool is yourself. I'm a big believer in what I call metacognition. That I need to think about the way I'm thinking, and am I fooling myself? And often I am, and I'm fairly kind with myself. I allow my entrepreneurs to get away with stuff. I allow myself to get away with stuff too. So yes, what do we do? So we follow a process. We actually put hurdles in their way, and we see how they respond. So effectively, we will expect a certain degree of discipline on their part. So you want to talk to me? I'm very happy to talk to you, but I want an email. I want it in writing. I don't want you to charm the pants away of me and then get the check. I want to see if you're disciplined enough to formulate your thinking. Because if you can write clearly, obviously you can think clearly. And if you can't be bothered to write clearly, then maybe you think clearly, but I don't want to take that leap of faith. And I've had so much flack and criticism about this. Oh, you're so snooty. What happens to all the guys who can't write English well? All kinds of this thing. But I said, look, that's a basic skill. I don't know, you better learn it. And therefore, I want everything documented. If you can't be bothered to understand what a pre-money valuation is, and then why the hell are you coming to me as an angel investor? So, I want proof that you've done your homework. I don't want to sit and spoon feed you for the rest of your life. So stuff like that. And sometimes I won't say we're deliberately rude, but the reality is email is very black and white. Sometimes we don't intend to be rude, but people could misinterpret as that. And people who choose to interpret my actions as rude are again red flags.
You expect to receive like a comprehensive pitch which has like a business projection and a business.
With pre-money value. And then a lot of people will say, अरे यार NDA sign करो, ये सब confidential है. I said, फिर मेरे पास क्यों आ रहा है? तो मुझको trust नहीं कर रहा है तो मेरे से पैसा क्यों ले रहा है? Go find someone else. All this, the fact that you're asking for an NDA itself is, that means I don't need to give you my money. So A, you come with a business pitch and no revenue, I'm not the right guy for you. Then you need to convince me that, why I should still invest you as a pre-revenue. And remember, I make my rules, I break my rules. I'm very happy bending them. But then I need you to prove to me that, they're worth breaking in your case. And you have the revenue, then share with me. And you don't want to share with me, then go find someone else. Because if you don't trust me enough, you trust a stupid piece of paper called an NDA and not my word, then obviously you don't respect me enough. And if you're going to treat me like you treat all other investors, then don't come to me, go find someone else. And if you're going to ask me for an NDA because that stupid incubator or your mentor who's charging you 5,000 or 10,000 for giving you advice is telling you what to do, then I don't want to talk to you.
So that is step one, that you want a detailed.
Yeah, so that's great because that acts like such an effective filter. So 90% तो वहाँ ही उड़ जाते हैं.
Then what's next step?
So then we say, okay, these are the guys who fit what I think makes sense. And I don't care about IIT and IIM, that's all rubbish.
How do you shortlist? Like, say you've received, let's say maybe 50 pitches in a month, which are detailed enough to cross your first hurdle.
I wish entrepreneurs were that. So, a lot of the guys who've reached that stage will not even want to come to me. They'd rather go to a VC. There are lots of advantage of going to a VC as comparing to Dr. Malpani. And there are lots of advantages going to an angel in network as compared to going to Dr. Malpani. So I tell everyone upfront, hey, I don't think I'm the right investor for you, which is fine.
So whom are you the right investor for?
I'm the right investor for a social impact entrepreneur who cares about doing stuff on the long term, who is looking for an angel investor who thinks of himself as being a partner in the journey, who doesn't care about an exit in 5 years, who doesn't want to burn his money either, but is happy to let you be the captain of the ship. And actually, I'm very happy when people have gone and tried raising money from other people because then they appreciate the fact that we can provide large sums fairly quickly. So effectively, again, and so we usually share stuff with them. We say, read this book. This tells you what my philosophy is or where I'm coming from. And if you think this makes sense, and we're not right for lots of people. Lots of entrepreneurs create startups which are VC designed. They're designed for VCs to invest in because they want to grow on 10x on this thing. So that's great, but that's obviously wrong for me. So very easy to say no to lots of those. Easy to say no to the ones who are obviously lying, hiding information, using vanity metrics like GMV and stuff like that. So वो तो सीधा नहीं हो जा. And then of the ones I find interesting, so then I share some emails.
As in, you ask them for more information or something, and then you see how quickly they give that to you. Okay.
Absolutely. And पैसे लेने के पहले जवाब नहीं देगा तो पैसे लेने के बाद क्या करेगा भगवान ही जानता है. Maybe I'm being unfair, but I mean, come on. At the end of the day, I have to use some heuristics to be able to sort out. I'm not saying my heuristics are perfect, but they work for me. I mean, could I develop a better set? Yes. Will I continue developing a better set? Yes. Trust me. But as of now, this is what it is. And 5 years from now, I may look back and cringe. What an idiot I was. But ठीक है. All of us are idiots. And I'm sure in 2025, I'll be an idiot of a different sort. That's all. So then once I've done that, then I will, so then, like I said, वो तो सब ठीक है. And then I hand off to my analyst, who then has a strict process which he follows, which we share with our entrepreneurs. So he can't let the ball drop.
The analyst does what? Like, for the due diligence, he needs data.
Yes, absolutely. These are the 10 steps we need to follow. We need to talk. We need to look at your accounts. We need to talk to your customers. We need to talk to the rest of your team members. That's all good stuff which you already know. I mean, that's very generic, but it's shared. It's shared with the entrepreneur, so he can prepare for all this stuff. Because we don't want to waste our time chasing people who are not right for us. Also, all this consumes bandwidth. We'd rather focus on, because the poor guy has enough to do managing the existing portfolio, which typically in an existing portfolio, 80% of entrepreneurs are good. It's just 20% who will drain all your energy, not sharing stuff. Partly because they're ashamed, partly because Dr. Malpani क्या कहेगा? कुछ नहीं कहने वाला है. Shit happens. I understand that. But trust me enough that I will not give you a hard time. I may not sign another check. That's an different issue. But if the only thing you think of me as a source of funds, then obviously I've done a bad job.
Okay. So how do you invest? Like you give them like what percentage of money upfront and what is the
So all rules of thumb, and like I said, all very very flexible. So again, a lot of this is going to be very misleading, because the beauty, the thing is about being a VC is everything is written in stone, because you made promises to your LPs, and then the analyst has to go and convince his boss, which is usually the GP, why this is a good idea. And then the GP has to convince an investment committee. So they're very, very constrained. My constraint is the size of check I can write. But fortunately, I have a lot of dry powder. The markets have been kind. So we bend rules all the time. So again, and mota moti, we've written what our sweet spot is and we share it. But that doesn't mean that, so for example, our sweet spot for a company would be, let's say, pre-money valuation of about 7 or 8 crores if you're earning revenue. Now, obviously, if you're earning more revenue, then that's no longer a relevant metric. Use your common sense. And it's perfectly, and the good entrepreneurs will say, yes, Dr. Malpani, I understand this is Falana Dikana. And they earn my respect because they've done their homework on me. And they know, okay, this is why, this is what it is, but I think this is why we deserve to be made an exception of for the following reasons. And then ultimately, everything is a negotiation. You convince me you're right, and big picture में कितना फर्क पड़ने वाला है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है. But show me how well you negotiate then. That's what I meant about putting guys through hurdles. You negotiate well. You try to create a win-win where I stand to benefit. Then boss, okay, if you want to keep all the gravy to yourself, then at some point you will shaft me when it's your next round or whatever else. I don't want to talk to you. Those are some of the things. So we'll make an offer, wait for a counter offer, teach them how to negotiate.
what is the stake that you look at like for winning?
About 20%.
Okay.
But again, like I said, all very, very variable. It should be enough that, it makes a worthwhile, it should affect my needle one way or the other. Otherwise, why the hell am I wasting my money?
So like say you commit to a startup that you'll invest 1 crore for 20%, then how do you disburse
Yes.
this? Like
Typically, we say take it in two tranches, because I, I always think having less money makes you smarter. Having too much money makes you do dumb things. So we said, look, I'm a man of my word. We're giving you you tell us what metrics you're going to meet with 6 months of funding. You decide, huh? I'm not telling you how to run your business. You meet those metrics, I'll disburse the second check. Suppose you don't meet them, I'm not Shylock. I'll still go ahead most probably because we don't want to kill you. But then you'll have to explain to me. But at least you will be much more focused and much sharper. And I think especially for young, fragile startups, they need a lot more handholding and monitoring. So ultimately, we say, look, we're doing this in your best interests. If you think it's not in your best interest, then don't come to me. Because we think it's in your best interest, because having that kind of oversight in a 30,000-foot view, so we can pick up where you're going wrong early on, so you don't burn too much money doing the wrong things. So course correction is that much easier. We tell people, look, I'm on your side. I've got skin in the game. I've given you a check. But what happens is afterwards people distort perspectives. Then some mentor will come and tell them, अरे यार डॉक्टर मालपा ने तुमको गधा बनाया है, चीट किया है, बहुत कम पैसा दिया, वैल्यूएशन बराबर नहीं दिया. हाँ, तो जब वो पैसा रेस कर रहा था तब तो कुछ कर नहीं रहा था. So we see a lot of this also, which is fine.
so like what is the value addition that you provide to an entrepreneur? One, of course, you is that you're giving money, no doubt about that, and then you are giving them some targets to chase. Besides this, what all?
No, no, they're setting their own targets and not me. So what we tell them is simple operational stuff. You do it yourself, but this looks way out or this looks this thing because we've seen other businesses. Now, one good thing is my family office invests in the listed space also. So because we're investors in listed space in that same domain, there is a lot of cross learning. So we can tell entrepreneurs, look, this is what a listed space guy thinks of. This is the way he thinks about his industry at his perspective. So they may not respect me, but they will respect the CEO of a 100 crore company, which you understand what I'm saying.
Right, right, right.
So therefore, and we encourage them, buy a share in the company, listen to the investor calls. At some point, you want to be in this guy's shoes 10 years from now. But so we bring that perspective as to what you need to be looking at as you grow over 5 to 10 years. So we focus a lot on corporate governance. We think of ourselves as kindergarten teachers. We're making you ready for middle school or junior school or whatever they call it these days. So that by the time you're ready for your next round, the next round of investors, whether it's a VC or whoever else, will have no problem signing a check. He'll mostly have a problem signing a check because Dr. Malpani says such terrible things about VCs, but not about that particular VC. No, sorry, kidding apart. But so therefore, okay, yes, all your paperwork is in order. You filed everything because a lot of startups, entrepreneurs haven't done this before. They're so focused on revenue targets and stuff like that. They forget about things like company culture. They forget about things like, filing returns on time and stuff. And we tell them, boring stuff, but needs to be done, boss. Hygiene to manage करना ही पड़ेगा. हंस के कर, रो के कर, और नहीं ढंग से करेगा तो रुलाएंगे.
So, as in y- your team would be doing calls with them where they would discuss these
Yeah, of
things.
course. So we expect certain stuff from them. So we expect after we've signed the check, we expect a monthly MIS. Uh, yeah, of course. And we say, look, don't do the MIS as a favor to me. You should do the MIS because it's your company. You need to manage it. And then we will tell you, these are the assumptions we made. That's the first spreadsheet on your this thing. Were those assumptions right, wrong? What are you tweaking? Then your financial spreadsheet, which is the easy bit, but which often a lot of them find very boring. But we teach them how to do that. But the more important thing is the operational metrics and what are the leading indicators. So how do you break up your channels? How do you think about them? Do you break them up by geography? Do you break them up by domain? Which are the important ones? Are you focusing too much energy on stuff which is actually not relevant? Do you follow the Pareto rule? Because we're not in the trenches and we don't want to be in the trenches and we won't tell you. And if you think what we're telling you is, we're being idiotic, please call us out. We're happy to learn. That's why we're giving you the check.
Okay. So, can you give me an example of entrepreneurs who really impressed you? Going through the process that you've laid out.
So don't forget the process itself has also
Right,
changed over
right,
time.
right.
So I didn't have such a detailed process when I was a part of Mumbai Angels. We had no process. Mumbai Angels जो करता था हाँ सब लोग you put your hand up, yeah, this sounds great, I'm signing. So you learn a little bit. But yeah, but so a lot of my entrepreneurs are, trust me, 2 steps ahead of me. And I love that. And entrepreneurs often don't respect investors, but they respect other entrepreneurs.
Right.
So we will tell them, fine, why don't you talk? And we tell all incoming these things, do your due diligence on me. Talk to the investors we've co-invested with. Talk to the entrepreneurs we funded. Are we good guys, bad guys? Maybe we'll give you less money than you want, but we'll help you deploy it far more intelligently. You know what? You actually don't require 2 crores to do what you think you're doing. Don't dilute so much at this stage. We'll show you how you can do it frugally in 1 crore. So many things. But some of that is intangible. But yeah, so I have a soft corner for certain companies. All of us do. So one of the ones I love is Multibhashi. And I always tell the founder of Multibhashi, who's Anuradha Agarwal, your problem, Anuradha, is you spoilt me because now every entrepreneur comes, I use your yardstick.
So, in what way did she? So, what did you like about her? Yeah.
She actually cold called me from LinkedIn. Didn't bother to get a warm introduction, and I love that. I mean, who cares about IIT and IIM networks and stuff? What will they do? Maybe they'll open a door, but after entering the door, boss, you still have to do your work for yourself. And all her groundwork was in order, and she knew as much about me as I share online. And she was doing something I found extremely attractive. Basically teaching people how to speak English. And how do you do that? And you had a paid model and a free model, and 50 different things. And she's always been two steps ahead and remarkably frugal and remarkably willing to let her team members grow. So love that culture about her. And she's a woman, and any woman entrepreneur has to be 10 times as good as a man to be able to get to any stage. So 50 different things.
Okay. And how is the venture doing?
So am I happy? Absolutely. If she goes belly up tomorrow, will I feel sorry? Yes. I'll feel sorry not because I lost money. I'll feel sorry because the potential impact she could have had. But having said that, financially she's doing very well. She raised the next round and stuff. But honestly, मुझे क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है? मेरे को थोड़ी कोई मार्क टू मार्केट कर रहा हूँ और मैं थोड़ी मेरे कोई एग्जिट कर रहा हूँ या पैसे निकाल रहा हूँ. ये सब vanity notional metrics है which I don't care about one way or the other. I think they're all distractions.
Okay. But I mean, my essential thing was like revenue wise, like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the.
Yeah, she's doing well, but what do I? No, how? I don't care. I would rather my entrepreneur made less revenue serving the right customers. बॉस तू रेवेन्यू के पीछे पड़ेगा ना तो तू बाइजू जैसा बनेगा. ओवर सेल कर, मिस सेल कर, पेशेंट पेरेंट्स बाढ़ में जाए, स्टूडेंट्स बाढ़ में जाए. ये सब एड के ऊपर लर्निंग के बारे में बात करना ठीक है. हु रियली केयर्स? तुम रेवेन्यू बढ़ाते जाओ, इन्वेस्टर को खुश रखो, क्योंकि इन्वेस्टर को नेक्स्ट इन्वेस्टर को सेल करना है. And that's exactly what's wrong with our entire ecosystem.
So, I mean, the reason to do a business is to, uh, I mean, sell your product or service, and
So to do it unethically, is that what you want to educate people?
no, I mean, you can.
हाँ तो एथिकली भी कर सकता है ना. तो
Absolutely.
टाइम ज्यादा लगेगा तो क्या घाई किधर है? I don't have a 3 year horizon. I don't need to raise my next fund. I can take a decadal perspective. And that's the difference between, that's the thing the stock up market investing has taught me. That companies in the listed space will do well if you give them 5 years to do well. If you keep on churning your portfolio every 6 months or every 1 year, you're doomed to lose money. So my point again is I've learned a lot of lessons from listed space, which I can now apply to my angel space. I don't care if he loses money in 3 months or 6 months because they're trying an experiment which didn't work. But I'm not telling you double your revenue every 3 years because hey, guess what? Now I've got a Series D investor who wants to see these metrics. अरे यार ये metrics अचीव करने के लिए मुझको व्हाइट हैट को अक्वायर तो करना ही पड़ेगा. हाँ ऑफ कोर्स मैं व्हाइट हैट को अक्वायर कर सकता हूँ. वायर कर दिया तो सीधा मेरा टॉप लाइन बढ़ जाता है. मैं सीधा यूएसए में मेरी ज्योग्राफी बढ़ गई सीधा. So all these people do all what I think personally are very stupid irrational things, but you know what, when you're a billionaire and you do them, they all seem very rational and stupid until of course the bubble bursts, which it always does.
Tell me something. Why did you take on Byju's?
I did not take on Byju's. Please, Akshay. So, look at my LinkedIn post. I've been posting on LinkedIn for 10 years. Of course, now that LinkedIn has taken me off, you'll have to go to my other site, which is indianangel.in, to see the archive of all my posts. So I'm an equal opportunity critic, okay? Now let me explain some of that. I only criticize stuff I care about. I don't criticize stuff I don't care about. So would I criticize a luxury company like, sorry, I don't even know the names, Versace or not? Of course not. I mean, they're doing what they're doing. Who cares? They're making money from people who can afford to give it to them. Great, let's learn from them. But I will criticize companies like Practo because Practo had an opportunity as a digital healthcare startup to fix the entire healthcare system. No vested interest. You didn't have to give cards, kickbacks, worry about pharma, all the rubbish which was going on. You had tons of money. You could have created a breath of fresh air. And what did you do? You sold out. Instead of putting patients first, you went and put, you maximized revenue. Your only way of making revenue was by creating a platform and selling the listings to doctors and hospitals. So I've criticized Practo, I've criticized doctors, I've criticized health, like I said, criticized corporate hospitals, criticized the government often enough. And why edutech? Because boss, that's our future generation. Our generation has messed up this country. We don't want the next generation to continue doing that. And you have a dividend, you have a demographic dividend, you have a sweet spot. Why the hell can't you do good for this next generation? These are your kids. And then you hear about Byju's. So multiple things. One is the work culture is extremely toxic. fire, hire, get all these young graduates, promise them the earth in them, 10 lakhs, zero experience. Boss, koi bhi bakra haan bolega. And then when they come, treat them like shit. But the trouble is that they expect to be treated like shit, and they think that every company treats everyone like shit. So when they become managers, Akshay, and when they become managers for your son or your daughter, as the case may be, how are they going to treat your kid? They don't know any better. So toxic work culture propagates like a cancer. So completely sick system. And the trouble is you see the cancer and you keep quiet. What does that say about people like you, Akshay? Because you want to be politically correct, you don't have any courage of your convictions, you don't have the backbone, the spine to speak up because you're invested in that company and you're encouraging. And a standard pass the buck corporate speak. And then you're cheating the students and parents. I mean, come on, tablets in this day and age, we talk about online learning and yeah, okay, let forget. So all that stuff and so much mis-selling and pressure and FOMO. अरे यार तेरे नेबर ने 5 साल का सब्सक्रिप्शन लिया है. You obviously don't care about your kid. You're a useless parent. And who do they target? They will not target Akshay Dutt or Dr. Malpani. They will target your driver who doesn't know any better, poor guy. And it's so easy to fool him and cheat him and, create all these dummy questionnaires and offer 100% scholarships. And so I said what I wanted to say. And, I actually told them, look, you have the opportunity to fix this. You didn't do this with bad intent, presumably. Making money is great. Please make it. All the more respect for you for making money. But don't sell your soul just in order to make money because you're a role model for all the other entrepreneurs who look up to you, Byju. And you actually have the opportunity to fix this by saying, we've healed a toxic work culture by making the following changes. So they reached out to me. The chief people officer actually publicly said, thank you, we're fixing the problem. And then they stabbed me in the back. So LinkedIn comes up and says, you're making defamatory posts. We're kicking you out. No thank you, no buy your leave, no process to be followed, no principle of natural justice, no chance for appeal. You signed our terms and conditions, and in our wisdom, we think, you're a useless guy. You contaminate our healthy professional network by saying all these things, even if they're true. They're toxic. We don't want toxic truth. We just want you to say nice things about people. You can say lies if you want, but as long as they're true, as long as they're nice, that's okay. So I said that's BS. But effectively, what LinkedIn has done is it has usurped my constitutional right to free speech.
Okay. Was it like a permanent?
Yeah, permanent. No response, no reply. They've not even escalated it internally. It's the same guy saying no, 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 finished. We don't care. You do what you like. ओके सो आई डू व्हाट आई लाइक. ओके तो मेरी नहीं सुनता है, कोर्ट ऑफ पब्लिक ओपिनियन की नहीं सुनता है, जर्नलिस्ट्स जो तुझको रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं प्लीज प्रेजेंट योर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू उनकी नहीं सुनता है, तो कम से कम इंडियन हाई कोर्ट की तो सुनेगा. तो आके सुन फिर. एंड टू दैट एक्सटेंट अगेन लॉट ऑफ पीपल माय वाइफ सेड व्हाई द हेल यू बॉदर्ड, क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है तुझको. एंड यू राइट आई एम नॉट बॉदर्ड बट आई केयर अबाउट फ्री स्पीच. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, would you be criticizing Byju's? I wouldn't because they weren't on my radar. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, will you be having a fight and filing a writ petition against LinkedIn in the High Court? I'd said, obviously not. Could I have predicted any of this, Akshay? No. But I will not back off from a fight when I think there's a cause involved.
There is this terminology of horse versus jockey in investments, like the horse being the entrepreneur or his team, and the horse being the business and the
Yeah.
market in which it operates, and the jockey being the entrepreneur and his team. So
Sure.
what do you bet more on?
Everyone always bets on the jockey because in such an early stage enterprise, really, the reality is that business plan which he shows you today is not going to be relevant 2 years from now. Because he'll be different, the market will be different, the environment will be different, competition will be different, and therefore you need someone who's resilient, who can think on their feet and respond to it.
So what is the importance of then making a business plan when you know that probably it will be like 90%?
It shows me the guy can think na. If he can't plan to kya karega. Okay, तो fair enough, you're saying the plan is a work of fiction, but इसको कम से कम fiction लिखना आता है ये तो मुझे बताना. Fiction नहीं लिख सकेगा तो बाकी क्या लिखेगा. So my point is, it's It's a basic competence which an entrepreneur needs to be able to display. And if he can't do that, then I have no confidence in him at all.
Hmm. Right. Got it. Okay. Okay. And so one last question which I want to ask you. So what is like what are some companies which you have not invested in but you are a fan of those founders?
In the real world, DMart, a lot of respect for Mr. Damani and his CEO. They've done such a great job and such a straight shooter, and they walk the talk. And I always tell all my entrepreneurs, this guy should be your role model, not the Byjus and the Flipkarts and all these guys. Because that's what you really want to create. You want to create a legacy. I'm also very fond of bootstrapped startup success stories like Zoho.
Okay. And Zerodha.
Yeah, yeah. So again, a lot of that stuff I don't know enough, quite frankly. But I'm just saying, so the DMart story I know quite a lot about. So that I can definitely say, this is what you should be looking at. And the great thing is it's all public domain. Get the annual reports for the last 10 years, study them, figure out where they started, where they're going to, find out what the magic sauce is. You may wonder, where is the magic sauce in running a retailer, a grocery? But there is. And how are they doing it? And why haven't they got onto the latest bandwagon? And lots of things to be learned.
And how do you keep yourself sharp? Like, how do you uh, like stay abreast of trends and
I'm very unsocial, Akshay. So I'm not very great at attending conferences, and of course, आजकल तो कोई करता भी नहीं है. So that just makes my life a little easier. But so I'm not great. I'm not a very social person. Books, and more books. I think if I had to choose everything, anything, I read fiction, very eclectic. I read about social impact. I read about, and the great thing is I always tell people if I had to choose between meeting the author of a book face to face for 60 minutes and reading the book, I'd rather read the book. And people say, whoa. And I said, part of the problem is then when you talk to someone, half the time you're thinking about what am I going to say next to impress this fellow. So you're not spending enough time listening to what the guy has to say. And I'd rather be a fly on a wall listening to him having a conversation on a podcast rather than conversing with him.
what kind of books do you like?
For a social impact entrepreneur, one of the books I recommend is called Worthless, Impossible, and Stupid.
It's like the best of him.
Lovely title, isn't it? But honestly, the books I recommend change every 2 years or 3 years because there's always a new book around. And again, we share a lot of this stuff on our websites. And I always tell them one book I'll recommend. I will only recommend the second one after I read a book review by you on the first book. Because the reality है recommend भी करता हो कोई पढ़ता भी नहीं है. जैसे कोई मुझे कोई काम धंधा ही नहीं है recommend करने के बजाय. So I'm happy to be helpful, but all I'm saying is that you should earn the right to ask people for help. And again, people get so pissed off when I say that. Yeah, but there are lots of people who hate my guts. Lots of people say, "Great, Dr. Malpani, so happy LinkedIn kicked you out. You deserved it."
How did they send you this? Like through email or Twitter or something? Is it?
Yeah, yeah, multiple ways. It's okay. It's okay. I said yes. I'm not a politician. My job is not to keep as many people as happy for as long as possible. So, I'm happy that you're happy to see me go. I'm happy I added that happiness to your life.
Okay. So, in terms of a long-term aspiration, like say, how would you like to be remembered 50 years, 50 years from now,
So legacy issues are extremely important. So I would say I would like to be remembered as the guy who healed a sick healthcare system and hopefully a sick startup ecosystem. But I don't know. That's where the healership thing comes in. That when you're a part of a system, you can see what's wrong with it. Now, it's not that everyone in the system can't see what's wrong with it, but because they make money by being wrong or by predating or taking advantage of people's ignorance and naivete, they refuse to call anyone else out.
But do you not believe in the power of free market to fix all
Of
problems?
course not. I'll come back to that. And I'll share some books with you, Akshay, to read why a lot of this free market, this thing is all rubbish. There is no such thing as a free market. Any government who sets the rules and decides what the playing field are, like the TRAI, for example, and then you tell me the telecom industry is a free market, then you're fooling me or you're fooling yourself. And I don't know what it is. So I understand the theoretical construct of a free market, but in real life, there definitely isn't one. So the point is that there are lots of people within the industry who know that the industry is sick. Like a lot of IAS officers will tell you, everything we do is wrong, but they'll only tell you that after they're retired. So I always tell people the sound of silence speaks far louder than anything else. So the fact that Byju chose not to file a defamation suit against me in the High Court, which they easily have the money to, says a lot about, what they think about it. And truth is the best defense against defamation. And then why they chose to use a backdoor entry and got LinkedIn to do the dirty work for them. And why LinkedIn doesn't care because, hey, what, we are owned by Microsoft, which is $1 billion US MNC. So who cares about Indians and their rights? पर ठीक है अभी प्यार से नहीं सुनने तो हाई कोर्ट का सुनेंगे.
What did your lawyers tell you about the probability of getting success in this case?
I don't even care if I win or lose because the outcome is not in my lawyer's hands. Does he follow the right process? And if he followed the right process and I lose, so be it. Willing to live with that. But did I create a certain degree of awareness about why these systems suck and what's wrong with them? Fair enough. Was that my intended outcome? Perhaps not. But what can I do about it?
So, possibly, I think for me, the biggest takeaway from this conversation is about process versus outcome. I guess this must have been a major part of being a fertility doctor, that
Yes.
you learn to accept that outcome is not in your hands, and uh,
I
the
think I
process
think
is in your
I think
hands.
life teaches you that all the time. We choose to learn it or not. I mean, even as a parent, you learn that no matter what you want, your two kids aren't going to be carbon copies of each other, and they all have a mind of their own. So many different things. And I think part of the problem is people who are successful. That success goes to their head, and they overestimate how much they contributed to, their skill contributed, and they underestimate how important luck was. So I have no delusion. A lot of people ask me, तो डॉक्टर मालपानी तूने क्या बड़ी चीज की है अब तक कि तेरे कौन सा स्टार्टअप यूनिकॉर्न बना है? So I said, I don't want any of my startups to become unicorns. That's not the reason I invest in them. While zigging, if you zag or banta hai, to I'm not going to be unhappy about it, but that's not my goal. That's a secondary outcome.
So that was Dr. Malpani talking about birthing humans and startups. He's a prolific blogger. If you like this conversation, then you can read his posts on indianangel.in. And if you want to pitch your startup to him, then visit malpaniventures.com.